Welcome back to season 2 of the Girl Crush podcast. Today, I'm bringing back a past fan favorite, Lizzi Cutler. Lizzi is an energy healer, a clairvoyant, a transformational coach, and now the facilitator of past life quantum healing. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, we're going to get into all of it, including the time that Lizzi took me through the experience myself. It's a wild ride, so buckle in. Here's my experience and my talk with Lizzi Cutler. Hi, Lizzi.
Hi, Donna.
Thank you so much for coming back. I'm so excited to have you back on the Girl Crush podcast. I have to say, I have to start off by telling you that the last season when we did our podcast together, it was the most popular, the most listened to podcast that I had all of last season.
Girl.
So a gold star for you, but no, I think it was great. People really loved it and must have talked about it because it was the most listened.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me back. I'm excited.
Yeah, I am so excited too. So we have a really interesting topic that we want to talk about. And if anybody that is listening did not listen to our first podcast, please go back and listen to that either before or after. But right now we're going to talk specifically about a new therapy modality that you are working with people on. And it's really interesting. And I think people are really going to love it. And it's called past life quantum healing.
Yep.
Am I saying that right? Okay. Past life quantum healing. So let's just get right into it. Tell me what that is, your own words.
So a past life quantum healing takes you through 3 to 4 past lives so that you can see what has transpired that is still impacting you in this current lifetime, which some would say doesn't make it past if it's relevant today. But you get to see 3 to 4 different past lifetimes that you've lived, as well as the people that you lived them with, as well as significant traumas, whether they're physical, emotional, energetic traumas that are impacting you today. In those lifetimes, we clear them and leave them back where they were. And then it wraps up with a little convo with your soul, where you as the client are answering your own questions about this current lifetime and getting the answers direct from soul. That's why I call it quantum healing, because we're going back into the past, making it relevant for today. And also by making it relevant today, it impacts the future. It's all time and space that gets impacted.
So people have had really impactful things happen to them after this. And I definitely want to get into talking about all of that. But there are a lot of benefits, like people are releasing trauma, like self-discovery, spiritual growth. And it seems that people that are going through this are finding benefits that they didn't necessarily know that they needed. So for instance, I spoke to some people that you have worked with on this. And one woman really stuck out to me because she said, when I went into this, I thought, I don't even really know if this is for me because I don't feel like I have so much trauma in my life. I don't feel that I have to heal these big traumas. And but when she went through it, she found out that she was kind of on the precipice of really doing something that was life altering in her career and in her life. And she was really kind of unsure of herself if that was the right, step in the right direction for her. And she had a lot of nerves about it and a lot of apprehension. And through doing this with you, she came out of it feeling no doubt, knowing full well that what she was about to do was the right thing, and just had, all of this confidence. And what happened to her, I want to get into it a little bit later because I think it was really incredible. But I want to just preface it by saying that, this doesn't necessarily have to be for people that feel like they're necessarily stuck. Although if they are, it obviously is a wonderful therapy for that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think a lot of times those of us that didn't have what we would consider significant trauma as children can sometimes feel like we don't want to be dramatic, or we don't want to act like woe is me, when we know that so many people have endured so much more significant or worse childhood. And I think that what ends up happening is you're kind of discounting that, okay, it's not as bad as. right? I remember my therapist used to say to me, stop saying, but I'm not starving in Africa. Like, you've never been a starving child. So to put yourself, if that's the only way that you get any compassion, you're going to be in trouble. So it's not about woe is me. It's not about heal this horrific thing that I went through in childhood. It's if there's something in your current present that isn't shifting, if there's a pattern or a cycle that keeps coming up, or a relationship that you can't get past, or something in a profound aspect of your life that you can't shift on your own, this is a great tool to understand there's some lesson that's trying to come through that I'm not getting. Help me get the message here. And so that's really what we're working through. So even though it's called therapy, it's more about gaining a deeper understanding and a different perspective to what we're used to just seeing in our 3D mind right in front of us.
So how did you discover this, and how did you train to be a facilitator of this?
So, as so many things in my life and my career, of the way that they've gone down, I started because I was reading a book about it. Like, a book kind of fell into my lap, and I was listening to a book about past lives. And then I dug a little bit deeper, and Instagram must have heard me, because then I started getting the ads. And this woman, of course, I'm going to blank on her name right this second. It'll come to me in a minute. This woman was doing these trainings, and it was a recorded training. And I originally looked at it over winter break last year, and I was like, oh, that'd be fun, but I don't know. And then it came back around during spring. And I was, not that I was bored, but I was getting a little maybe stagnant in my work and in what I was doing just for myself. And so I did this more as this will be a fun thing to do with friends and family, and not at all thinking that I would move into this with my career or with the clients that I was working on. And as I did the training, and then as I started practicing on friends, it all made sense that the energy edits and the energy alignments that I was doing were really helping people clear stuckness and clear challenges from this lifetime, from this childhood. And the past lives, adding that in now helps me clear from past lifetimes. So it feels like it's more all encompassing now, but it literally was like, I'm curious, I'm a little bored. Let me do this fun thing while it's cold and it's winter in Chicago. It morphed into this, I was reaching out to friends and close clients, like, can I try this thing on you? See what happens. And then as it was happening, I was like, holy mama, this is crazy. This is some cool stuff that's coming up. So then I figured out how it worked and fit in my business as a healer and helper.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like it's a natural progression into the things that you were already doing with, energy alignment and energy healing and things like that.
I feel kind of dense that I didn't see it like that. Those dots did not connect at all. I was like, the last thing I need is another offering for people to not understand what I do.
Well, to that point, let's have them understand it. So let's talk a little bit more. I have done this with you. We're going to definitely get into that a little bit later, but let's talk about the process and what happens when someone books this service with you.
Okay, so you book a session with me. I block 3 hours of time, which I know sounds like a lot, but I'll walk you through why we want that much time. As soon as you book your session, you're going to get an email from me with a list of questions that I want you to curate. And the list can be, this is the list of what we're going to ask your soul. So this can be anything from, like, when I did my session with someone, I asked, why does my back hurt? Why are my sinuses so bad? Is there anything I could do to help my allergies more? So like physical stuff, all the way down to how do I heal certain relationships? Like, is there anything that I'm doing to prevent my partner from finding me and having a life with a partner? So like those kind of things. Is there anything I should be doing for my career that I'm not thinking of? Is there anything I should be doing for my health that I'm not thinking of? Is there any reason why I can't lose weight in this one specific part of my body? So those kind of tangibles. And then I also added, and I ask this in every session, what is my sole purpose here? And what are the tangible, actionable tools you want me to be doing daily, weekly, monthly, yearly in order to stay in alignment with you, my soul? So I have you make that list of questions. And I usually tell people, like, call your friends and your family and say, what are the things I'm always like complaining about? Because those are the things we want to ask about. So then we start our session by reading through those questions to make sure we're on the same page, that I know exactly what you're asking. And then it also gives me the opportunity to get a little background info. So specifically for clients where I'm just going to do this one session and I haven't been working with you for a while, I want to know the players, the parts, the where's it coming from. And as we're talking about the questions, I'm already getting intuitive hits. I'm already hearing things from your highest self, which is telling my highest self. So it's like you're plugging me in as a guide to help lead you through this. So we read through all of that. And then I put you in this hypnotic state where, and Donna, I would love for you to chime in here. It's a hypnotic state where everybody that I've worked on says they are completely present, that they know I'm laying on my couch, I'm on Zoom, this chick is in wherever she is doing this thing to me. I have complete control over what I'm doing, and I know that I'm doing this. And yet we get to a place where the words coming out of your mouth are not necessarily your own. So it can feel like I've had clients get up and let their dog in the room or even go to the bathroom. They're like, I have to pee right this. They'll get up and go and come back and be right back in it. So sometimes when I say we're going to go into this hypnosis, that can sound intimidating. And I agree. And so I like to be really clear. It is not a vulnerable place in the space of, I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't even know this girl to be putting me into this kind of a space. Would you agree with that, Donna?
I would 100% agree. So I think when people hear hypnosis of any kind, it feels a little scary. It feels like you're losing control in some way.
Totally.
And I wasn't nervous about that because I know you and I trust you. And so I went into this very feeling very safe and very trusting. But I was more afraid that I was going to like fall asleep. And I think I told you that a few times because I had been, the time that we did this, I was just really tired that whole week. And I was like, oh, I want to be present for this. And like, I was nervous that I was going to fall asleep. And for me, there was no chance that I was anywhere near sleeping, but the state that I was in was probably one of the most relaxed states that I was ever in. So it's almost like if you meditate, it's almost like if you're having a really, really good meditation, because I felt completely in control at all times. I never felt like you were controlling my mind or anything like, crazy like that. I felt completely in control. I felt very, trusting in you. And I felt very kind of excited to see what was going to come next.
Yeah. So it ends up being like 10 to 12 minutes of getting you into that state of relaxation. I've never had anyone fall asleep. And frankly, like I usually say to people, you are in control of this session. I had one client who kind of what I thought would have been midway through, she was like, okay, I'm done. And I brought her out and that was that. And really she's already out. I was like, wait, I think I should still say this whole thing to you to bring you out. So, but you're never out of control. You're never not present to where you are. So we get you into that state. Then we see 3 to 4 lifetimes. And you as the client are the one talking through this whole process. So I'm saying to you, look down at your feet. What do you see? Now look around. Now go to an important day. Go to an important moment. Who's sitting at the table? Do you recognize them from this lifetime? Go to another important day. And we go all the way through to where you're just observing it. You're not physically or emotionally feeling anything. And you're able to observe it, which means you're able to see it from a different perspective than when you lived it in that lifetime. And in addition, if I'm seeing that there are places or parts that are relating back to the questions that we read through, I'm going to be doing some energy work with permission in those moments. So I'll say, do I have permission to clear this for you right now? And sometimes clients say yes, and sometimes they say no, and I follow suit. So that's where I will say I took this training and I kind of made it my own, in that because I do the work that I do and I'm an energy worker and I'm clairvoyant and clairaudient, like I can add that extra zhuzh to it. So we go through 3 to 4 lifetimes, including seeing the death. And the reason it's so important to see the death is to leave that being there in that space instead of it lingering through. And then we call in your subconscious or your soul. And I'm literally reading through the list of questions asking you, the client, the list that you created, and you're answering your own list from the voice of your soul. And then after that, we put a nice little bow on it. We come out, and then I read through all the notes that I've taken, because while you're in those lifetimes, I'm connecting a million dots for you, like puppet or a
Yep.
guide helping you through. And usually when people come out of this, it's been so much time that there's a lot of like, I don't really remember what just happened. I know that was wild, but, and so I read through it. And then you're going to get the recording of the whole thing from the second we start until after I've read through my notes and we've processed it together. You'll get the recording of all of that to go back and listen as you desire.
Yeah, and I feel, and I'm sure that everybody is different in this capacity in doing it. But for me, I felt very different in each of those time, in each of those parts of this.
Yeah.
And I think I feel, and maybe you didn't feel this way, but I feel like in the beginning, I did have a little trouble kind of getting to a place where I felt
Yeah.
that openness.
Yeah. And this is what I like to say. And I say this before every session. Look, if you get in there and nothing happens and you don't feel anything or see anything, I'll shift and we'll do something different. I'll make
Mhm.
sure that you get like something great out of our time together. If nothing happens, nothing happens. And I like to give permission that say whatever you see. And if you feel like you're making up, say it anyway and we'll figure it out. If you're seeing black, tell me you're seeing black. And if you see that you're a fish or a mermaid or a troll under a bridge, say that and we'll sort it all out. And that's fine. I can 100% appreciate this is weird. It's not something that we've been raised to believe in. So it's a leap of faith in the first place. And I think it's really important that the pressure of, I hope I can do this, is taken far away.
Mhm.
Because to me, once that pressure is off, where I'm like, by the way, I have other tools. So if you had said to me, you know what, Lizzie, I'm not seeing anything. And I don't feel anything. I don't get anything. I have tools to use to say, like, okay, cool. Here's what we're going to do now. So I think by taking all of that pressure of like dance monkey, now
Mhm.
perform and see this thing that you're not even sure that you believe in is really that's my intention to give to clients.
Totally. And I definitely think too, it sounds very like woo woo, but when you're actually in it, doesn't feel that way. And I
No,
know that sounds crazy, but it really doesn't feel that way. It just feels that you are in this very relaxed state and things are coming to your mind and out of your mouth that, you're it's not that you don't have control over them, but they're just coming very easily.
yeah.
These images are coming to you easily. You find yourself in these scenarios. And listen, I'm very open minded, but I had never done it. And I had those feelings of like, oh, what if I can't do it? What if I'm too closed
Yeah.
off to do it? Or what if my mind's racing too much? And those are, I think, very real fears that anyone would have. But then once you get into it, like I said, you're just kind of there and you're in a state where, however you want to call it, your soul is bringing you, the universe is bringing you, whatever is showing you these pictures of your past life. It's just very easy.
Yeah, I'd actually like to chime in. So the whole thing starts once you lay down and we get comfy. The whole thing starts with me saying, if I asked you to see a red bird, could you see one? And so wherever you're listening right now, even if you're driving, if I tell you to see a red bird, you picture it in your head. That's where we're working. So I'm getting all of the noise of, did I send that email and what time do I have to be at this place? I'm getting that quiet. The volume on see a red bird can get a little bit louder. And that's the part of your brain that we're playing with. So it's not that I'm not doing anything fancy. We all have access to it. We've just learned to quiet it down. And now we're just turning the volume up a tish.
I have to say, I'm remembering this now when, in the beginning when you were saying, like, can you see a red bird if I told you to see a red bird? For some reason, I really enjoyed those like couple of minutes. And I remember when we were moving off of it, my mind going like, no, let's continue to do that. And I don't know if it was because I was like letting myself let go
Yeah.
of other things that were in my head, but that part of it And it's just what, a couple seconds, a couple
Yeah.
minutes, but like that part of it felt so good to me that I was like, let's continue to play this game of like, tell me what to see and I'll see it. I don't know if anybody else had that experience, but
One thought is that I'm guessing you loved it because it's easy, right? Like you're getting a gold
maybe,
star.
yeah.
Whereas in most of our working day, it's not so easy. I tried to do this with my mom. And when I said, "Can you see a red bird?" She said, "I don't know, Liz. I see a cardinal." I'm like, "Yeah, mom, that's a red bird." It was amazing. So again, like there is a playfulness to this that especially is necessary in the beginning. And then I think once we sort of dip our toe in the water and we're like, oh, it's really warm and this feels fun and good, it's okay. Then we start playing a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. So that definitely felt really good to me. And even the transport into these past lives felt really good to me. And I was giving myself permission to feel that relaxed um and not have to think about really anything else.
Yeah. I also think that for our soul, there's a freedom to being able to dance in that space and not be so limited to what our 3D, like our current present brain wants to experience. Right. And this machine in our head, our brain is designed to go into the past and assess it and then create predictions for the future. And by opening up and seeing there's so much more out there, I think this is a very weird analogy to give. It's like unbuttoning your jeans at the end of the day, like, or taking your bra off, like, oh, I can breathe. This feels so much better. And so by opening up, like, hey, by the way, sweetie, all this neuroses that you have in your head, it's not just from these X amount of years. We've got other details to work with here. And so I think part of that feels so good and so soothing that it's like you're going through the files of what's
Yeah.
really impacting you now.
Yeah, and I think having you to kind of connect the dots was so helpful because I didn't see, even though I was going through these past lives and I was talking about what I was seeing and what I was feeling and all of that, but I wasn't in the state where I was connecting the dots of what the actual message was.
Right.
And then when you said it at the end, I was like, of course that's what that meant. Of course that's what that meant. How did I not see that?
Yeah. And I think that when you're the client in the session, when you're the one laying down doing the speaking, your job is to be the microphone. You're the conduit. You become the channel. Like you become
Mhm.
the medium and the channel
Mhm.
of what needs to come through. You're not meant to be also processing it while it's happening. That's why I'm there taking notes. It's why I'm sitting there, like making sure I'm connecting the dots and helping. And it's why we record it so that then you can go back and listen again and have that thinking brain attached while you're doing it.
Right. That definitely makes sense. So I know that you have said people have experienced some really crazy things. And you said at one point that there were certain people that actually speak differently and like their cadence and their voice is actually different.
Yeah. So
Talk
even
about
some
that a
of the
little
women
bit.
that you were talking about earlier, so we go through the 4 lifetimes and then we ask all of those to go back to where they were. And then I call in the client's soul. And just to clarify this, to me, soul is sort of the all-encompassing, all-knowing being that we are. Energy doesn't start and stop. When this physical human zip-up suit, when this 3D body dies, it will decompress, but the energy, the essence of me, Lizzi, morphs into something else. And so that's the piece of me that is coming in and communicating. And with a lot of people, their cadence will change and their tone of voice will change. So, with one of the clients that you were referencing earlier, as soon as I started asking her soul, she started speaking like this. Her voice got her tone dropped, like her accent changed. And when she listens back, she of course is hysterically laughing and she's like, what in the world is going on? And for some people, I'll get more yes no answers. And then even when we're in, like if I'm in the soul section and someone says they want to clear a karmic tie to either a boss or an old lover or someone that's not serving them anymore, a parent, and I'll say, "Can you clear this for her?" Sometimes the soul will be quiet and I'll say, is this for you to clear or can I clear it? Or is there more information that we need? And I'll get this like drop tone of like, "You may clear now." Like it is some voice, like almost like a robotic.
Wow. Yeah.
For some people, it's totally the same. The voice is the same, but the information coming through, they'll listen back and say, "Those aren't words that I would ever use." Or it's not the way I would phrase that if I were going to say it.
Hmm. I didn't have an experience like that, but I feel like I was seeing more than I was verbalizing.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's still super clear to me. And we did this like weeks ago. And I can remember each of those 3 lives
Yeah.
pretty clearly. Like I didn't, sometimes like you have a dream and then like later you can't really remember it. It's not like that for me at all. I remember them so clearly and I feel that I was almost like trying to figure out and trying to like internalize all of these things that were coming to me. But when you look at the recording or you listen to the recording, I wasn't saying everything that I was feeling. And I think that maybe I was just like trying to process it.
Well, that to me is it's when you do have a very vivid dream and you wake up and tell someone about it, the words don't quite express it. However, on the recording, you hearing the words that you use will give you the visual memory with all the extra details.
Yep.
And so I
Yeah.
think that's really normal that everyone says like I don't know if I explained it right. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's in your cells now.
Yeah.
That's how we needed it.
Yeah, it was so interesting, and there was a like a past life that I visited where I was this woman, and we kind of went through different times in her life, and she had this daughter, and she was really happy because her daughter was going to be able to not have the limits that she had in her own life. And she was so happy that I literally can like get choked up by it. Like she was so happy that she knew she was giving her daughter this life that would not have the limitations that she had in her own life to like not fulfill the things that she wanted to do. She was so happy that she was able to let her daughter do these things. And you said to me, "Do you recognize the daughter from anyone in your life right now?" And I so clearly felt that it was my daughter right now in my current life and I said no. And I'm not sure why. And I think that my personal opinion is that I felt like, well, that can't be my daughter now. And it must just be because I have a daughter now that I think that. And I think that my brain was just going in those, and I felt like, oh, that's too easy, or maybe that's too impossible, or whatever it was. I didn't, but while I was in it, I 100% felt that it
I'll
was
usually
familiar.
say to people, if you're looking at someone that you're seeing in a past life, it's not that they will physically look the exact same as the person in this lifetime, but their
Right.
essence will be the same. There's this knowing of, I know exactly who you are. And that's the soul, right? The soul imprint, the soul's vibration doesn't change. The physical form might change. And the reality is, Donna, it doesn't matter if you said it on the video or not. It doesn't matter if you said yes or no or why you said yes or no. It's already programmed in your cells. So that healing is already happening, regardless of what you said or didn't say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also want to talk about, I know that you have had clients who have felt like physical pain and they've gone back and realized why that was. If Would you want to take me
Yeah.
through that, because I think that that's really interesting.
So, the most profound experience of this that I saw was a woman that I work with who's in her 40s, who's been a physical therapist for the last 20 years and knows the body incredibly well. And she's an athlete. And she said, I'm throwing this into my list of questions. I'm not expecting anything from it, but just because you told me to, I have this pain on the left side of my ribs, haven't been able to get rid of it. I had never heard her talk about this before, and I've known her for a year and a half as a client. And so we're in the session, and maybe 3 or 4 lifetimes in, I said, okay, go forward to when you die, your last day on this in this lifetime. And what's happening? What do you see? And she said, there's like a war going on, there's a fight going on, a battle going on, and out of nowhere, I'm stabbed. There's a knife that goes through my chest. And I said, "Can you see where it goes through?" And she said, "Yes." And she like explained where it was. And I said, "Okay, let's set the intention. Like, you're not experiencing this. You're going to look at it from a bird's eye view. You don't have to feel it, but I want you to see I'm helping you here. You're going to scoop all of the pain of the wound, of that flesh wound. We're going to scoop it out like scooping out wet sand. And we're going to leave it next to that body in that lifetime on the ground, wherever you drop and you're bleeding out. We're going to scoop the wounded area out and leave it next to you. And we're setting the intention to leave all of that pain there in that lifetime, and none of it will be able to carry with you in this lifetime." Okay, done. We move on. We do the whole thing. And it's been months now. And I've asked her, "How's the pain?" And she's like, "It is 100% gone.
Oh my gosh.
100% gone," which tells me it wasn't something physical from this lifetime. It wasn't that she tweaked it playing one of her sports. It was this old thing that once she saw it and acknowledged it, like, "Oh my gosh, you poor being that you were killed like this," it could stop warning her of like, "Don't forget this pain."
Wow.
Because, and we've talked about this in that first podcast, but pain is here to remind us of something shitty that happened so that we don't do it again,
Hmm.
right? You get burned from the fire and you remember it because when you get close to something hot, you want to pull away before you get that burn again. So the fear is there as a great tool. It's to prevent something from happening again. It's just that most of the fears that we carry are not applicable. And we don't even realize that we're carrying them because they've been in our cells for not only all of the years that we were here in this current body, but stuff is getting carried through. And so by clearing that stuff out, whether it's physical trauma, sexual trauma, emotional trauma, I mean, when you think about the history of mankind, every single one of us, I don't care what your ancestry is in this lifetime, every one of us has been part of rape and pillage, right? So, like, it's been nothing but wars and fighting for land and fighting for food and fighting for survival and power.
Hmm.
So the likelihood that we're carrying something is pretty,
Hmm.
like, no one got out of here alive.
Right.
So that's what we're clearing. And so that's the why behind it. Like, because I understand if you're listening and you're thinking this is such a load of shit. There's no way that physical pain could be cleared by having this memory cleared up. And I'm here to say I watched it. Like, I
That's
watched this.
crazy.
Yeah, another client had a back issue. They've done MRI after MRI, couldn't figure out what was wrong with her back. Healthy 20-something-year-old person. And we did this. She saw trauma actually from this lifetime that she hasn't been able to touch because it's so intense that when we went in and I did the work for her clearing it out, she hasn't had the same pain. And she was
Um,
at the point where like doctors were like, "We don't know where this is coming from. This doesn't make sense." So this is where it can be really helpful. When you've done
yeah.
PT, when you've done all the things and you've tried all the things and it's still not working, I wouldn't recommend waiting that long, but like here's another
Right.
to add to the arsenal.
Yeah. That's so amazing. So, talking about fear, and this kind of question just like popped into my head. Do you think that people have such different experiences? Do you think that it's related to like the age of your soul? You know how people say like, or I feel like this person is a very old soul. Like, to me that feels like they've experienced, their soul has experienced so much, and they're wise in some ways. And then other people just kind of feel like they're brand new, and I'm wondering, do you think that that has anything to do with how people are experiencing this with you? Have you seen any evidence of that?
Yeah, that's a meaty question. So I'm going to back up a second. I'm going to just turn that on its head a little bit and say maybe the what we would consider to be old souls, which I was a little girl at Haight Ashbury, maybe like 12 years old, and I remember some older man, he was probably my age, an older man saying, "Wow, you're a really old soul." And I looked at him and I said, "I know." And I don't know where that came from. Like, I knew from the second I woke up I've been here a million times before.
Wow.
I don't know that that makes us old souls. I think it maybe means that we've lived a bunch of lifetimes. I have a cousin who, to me, feels like the closest thing I've ever experienced to someone who's enlightened ish. And I wonder if either she's actually an old soul because she's worked through so much karma at this point that she is very light and free and connected and effortless about it. So I don't, I just want to make sure we're using the same language here. Whereas I think in our culture, we think of an old soul as someone who's lived a lot of lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say someone who's lived a lot of lifetimes has a lot of clearing to do because there's a
Okay.
lot that you're carrying with you, right? If I've run 800 marathons versus one marathon, I'm going to have different marathon experience as well as trauma and
Mm-hmm.
pain and be careful of that. And, right? If I've played 16 soccer games and some chick blew my knee out, if someone's running near me, I'm going to hold my leg differently than someone playing their first soccer game.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I think those of us that have experienced a lot of lifetimes, I think that this work is more, I don't know if accessible is the word, but maybe you get more meat out of it, or maybe there more sessions are more beneficial because there's so much content to go through. Does that answer the
It
question?
does. And it brings to mind also the fact that some people are so self aware, others are not. And I question whether that has anything to do with how you experience this as well.
Yeah, I think something that I've been saying to clients and friends, really like friends and community, as I'm out in my world talking about this, because as you would imagine, when I'm out in the world and people say, "What do you do?" there are a lot of eye rolls, and I don't mind. It's fine, and I'm happy to have the conversation. But when I now bring up past lives, not only do I do energy work, but I also work in past lives. It's like, oh, geez, here we go.
Yeah.
And what I have found is that most mainstream, let's call them people that would maybe be closed off to this work typically, I've kind of been responding with like, "Well, give it a shot, you have nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, nothing comes up. Best case scenario, it blows your mind."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, I think it's an interesting entry point for the spiritual world to someone who thinks astrology is a load of shit. Tarot is, you can any if you go in a room with 200 people and someone says who has a grandfather with the name of, someone's going to raise their hand. Like, I get it. I get the skeptic. I was the skeptic. Try it.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think you as a facilitator, you are, and anybody who is listening to this can tell, I mean, you're a very relatable, normal, you can speak, you speak in terms that everyone understands. You are not this like kind of woo woo, person who like you don't relate to. Like it's very you're very easy to kind of talk to, and you're not offended if somebody says, well, I don't know if I believe this, or this isn't,
Right.
this isn't for me. But I also think that if you are completely shut down and you have no belief in anything like this, then you're not going to have a good experience. I mean, probably, right? I don't
Right.
know
I
if
mean,
I'm right or wrong there.
yeah, if you're coming in to prove me wrong and you're fighting it tooth and nail, sure. Really, my response to that, because I had that in the beginning when I was just doing intuitive readings, people would kind of come in with their arms crossed, and energetically with their arms crossed. Like, I'm not here to be a dancing monkey.
Yeah.
I don't care. If you don't have the experience, it's not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also that freedom where I do feel like as a facilitator, I'm trying to bridge the gap between normal people and an entry point to this other side because it is real, because it can help, because when you've tried physical therapy and talk therapy and you've been on probiotics and you've been done to the GI doctor and your stomach still hurts every time you eat, we can help you. And this is a resource to use and maybe just give it a go.
Yeah. And I 100% believe in, the spiritual and the physical have a lot to do with each other, just like the mind and the body have a lot to do with each other. And I think that the more open people are to learning about that, the better that they're going to be, because it's just kind of at this point, to me at least, it's just kind of your part of your overall health. And not everybody feels that way. I've, had experience with meditation and and I've done energy clearing. You do these group energy clearings, and I think that once you experience something like this and you get it, you get something from it, even if it's just like the smallest part, it just kind of opens your mind to it, and it just
Really,
helps you.
it really is a great entry point to opening up so much more.
Yeah.
And I think because I do this a little bit differently than a lot of other practitioners do, in that in these sessions, the client is the one speaking. And I've talked to a lot of people that have done past life regression, where it's the facilitator speaking, which I'm sure is also amazing. To me, there's something really magnificent about me hearing my voice answer my questions.
Yeah.
Where I actually did have a client come out of the session, and the first thing she said was, "I didn't like that at all. I hate."
Really.
And I was like, "Amazing. Tell me why." And she was like, "I wanted you to be the one answering the questions. I wanted you to be the one telling me what I was supposed to do moving forward." And I said, "With all due respect, why? Why? Why do you want me? Why not believe you?
Mhm.
How much more powerful could it possibly be?" And by the way, this woman in her lifetimes saw a lifetime in Egypt, a lifetime during the Spanish Inquisition, which I had to look up when and what was happening,
My
and
gosh.
the future. She saw herself healing physical pain in the future through love, flying around a library. It was one of the most incredible things I've seen.
Wow.
And then she saw all this physical pain being healed in herself. And when she came out, I was like, I just want you to see and pause for a second. Nothing could possibly be more powerful than when you listen back to this recording and you hear your own voice give you specific instructions on how to heal yourself. It's
Wow.
not about me. I'm here holding your hand. I'm here guiding you. I'm protecting you. I'm holding your space. And I am working for you like your cleaning lady, cleaning out the back of your closet while you're in there. But
Mhm.
my gosh, this has to come from within.
Yeah. Did she wind up having a change of thought after a little while?
Yeah. I mean, we've been working together. Like she's one of my one-on-one clients. So we've continued to work together and it did have a deep impact. But I think most people come out of this session and it's a lot of information and it's 3 hours of sitting with someone. And then I usually say, give yourself a break for a day or two, and then go
Mhm.
back and listen to the recording in bite sized pieces. Like if you're in the car driving to Trader Joe's for 20 minutes, listen to the 20 minutes and then stop it, and then listen to the next 20 minutes on the way home. And just over the next week or so, get through the recording. Because, first of all, if you tell me I have to meditate for 30 minutes twice a day, every day, I'm not going to do it.
Mhm.
And it just feels like too much of a time commitment. And I had to figure out a way for this to work into my life where it didn't feel like work. And I think when you listen back in bite sized pieces, A, you're more likely to do it. And B, it can magically, you're going to hear the thing that you need to hear at the time that you need to hear it.
Yeah.
And it all just somehow works out. And that's the magic behind all of this being a quantum healing. It doesn't just happen when you're laying on your couch on Zoom with me. It continues to happen after we've met, and it continues to impact all of the past lives that you had before.
I definitely afterwards, my husband was here and was like, "So tell me about it." And I was like, "I literally can't. Like I can't talk. I will tell you about it,
Yeah,
but right now just felt like I needed to kind of sit with it and sit with
absolutely.
what was, what was happening, and also wanted to kind of be by myself and like shut it off too because it
Yeah.
was intense and a little exhausting. I mean, although exhausting is not maybe the right word, because I did feel very refreshed after, and I didn't feel, I stayed up a little while. This was at night, but I got the most intense sleep that night, and I was expecting I'm going to have all kinds of dreams. I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm going to be thinking about all these things that just happened, and that's not the case. I did not expect to get the best night's sleep I've probably gotten in, I don't know, like
That
a
alone makes
year.
me so happy because we know the restoration that happens when you get that kind of a snooze is
Oh,
so. It's like you got a twofer.
It really, seriously, for that alone it's so worth it. To get like a good peaceful night's sleep is like the best thing in the world right now. And like I said, everything still to me is very clear. It's clear as day. I can see what I saw. I can feel what I felt. So yeah, it was crazy. And I didn't have some of the really traumatic lifetimes that I think other people have experienced, where I was, killed in a horrible way or violent way or anything like that. But you were pretty much, at least two of the three were pretty peaceful deaths, where I felt at the end of those lives pretty at peace and almost okay, to ready to go.
It's a really awesome to bring up. Is something that I've noticed is if people have a very strong fear of death, whether it's a family member dying or themselves dying, this is a really incredible practice and therapy because it allows you to see the peace in death and that there's no pain, right?
Mm,
That like each time I've in all these sessions that I've done, no one has ever said this feels so hard. It's more been like like this has really helped my family as my grandma is 94 and has dementia, to just kind of share with my family like, look guys, I don't have facts around this, but I will say all these people that are dying and watching their deaths, they're saying it's almost like the physical body leaves before, not the physical body leaves, but maybe the feeling sensations leave before the physical body has died,
mm-hmm.
right? So even if we're choking or if it's something horrific, it's not as scary as it feels like it would be when we're sitting here thinking about that happening, having to live through it.
Yeah.
So if there's a fear of planes, a fear of water, like a fear of, if you have some kind of severe phobia, severe fear of death, this is absolutely something that could potentially be a huge game changer for you to let go of that fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see that. I want to ask about you as the facilitator. How does that feel on your end to see people kind of going through this and working things out? What does that feel like to you?
So it's interesting because this morning I was texting one of my aunts and I was saying how unbelievably honored I am to get to do the work that I do,
Love
because
that.
I'm like sitting on my couch wherever I want to be in the world, watching people change their lives, and I get to just hold their hand while I guide them through it. But they're doing the work of it, right? So
Wow.
I'm not exhausted after it. I'm not drained after it. If anything, if I do, I can really only do two a day. That's only because it's so much sitting that I like get too udgy
Hmm.
sitting that long.
Does it
But
feel exhausting to you? Like, is it tiring? Is it energizing? Do you feel like,
I'm usually pretty energized by the end of it. It's not exhausting at all. It doesn't drain my energy at all. It's the same as when I do energy work on people. People will say to me, "Are you exhausted after you've done energy work?" Because in those, I am the one doing the heavy lifting.
hmm,
And even those don't tire me. It's not whatever gift I've been given, whatever this thing is that I do, it's not a detriment to me. It doesn't take out of me, it fills me. I think if I weren't doing this, I would be in trouble. So it's almost like I have to use this muscle in order to feel good in my skin.
I
So
love
it
that.
really is a gift to be able to do it.
I love that. And I will say, I spoke to several people that you have taken through this experience, and I've gone through this experience. And unprompted, all of these people that I spoke to said that the reason that they feel like they got so much out of it, or the reason that they felt like they were able to experience what they experienced or learn the lessons that they learned, was because they felt safe, they trusted you, they knew that you wanted the best for them. And so, maybe different words, they were all saying that having you facilitate this process for them was the biggest part of it, because they were able to feel safe. They were able to feel taken care of. They were able to feel that if they needed to be vulnerable, they could be, because they trusted you. So that came through in every single person that I spoke to, using their own words, but very unprompted. So you clearly have
Thank you.
the gift for that. And I think that's so important, because how could you possibly, if you don't, if you don't trust the person that you're with, like, how could you possibly want to go through something like that
Yeah,
with them?
you're not going to. And I will say one of the things that I feel really lucky to be able to do with my work is the shadow stuff, like the darkness doesn't scare me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy to jump into the darkness with you. And that's what I've always done in my other sessions. And this is no exception. So it's not that darkness always comes up by any means. To your point, Donna, like you didn't see anything horrific and
Mm-hmm.
terrifying, but as it has come up, or I've had a handful of clients that are in non-human form. I had two separate clients who don't know each other be mermaids. I've had clients go to other planets. I've had clients go to what they call the in between space, where they're in between consciousness and subconsciousness. I had one client who was in some other realm where she could see how love is distributed and moved through the world. Like,
Wow.
I've seen really unbelievable things. And I think I did a lot of work with plant medicine and ayahuasca. I've done a lot of like that work. So going deep and going into the scary stuff doesn't scare me. I'm happy to hold your hand there. I'm happy to sort of be the flashlight as we get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't rock me. And I
Yeah.
think that's like part of my soul's purpose here is to
Yeah.
help bring people through the cave.
One person I spoke to said that she had an experience, or she's had this kind of like faint memory that she wasn't really sure if it was real until she started working with you. And it was about, it had to do with abuse. And she said, I kind of had these images that would come up once in a while. And until I started working with Lizzi, I wasn't really sure if it was true or not. And she said, what she was saying, to what Lizzi said to me, was the body doesn't lie. And so, like, if you are feeling this in your body, the body's not, your body is not going to lie to you. And she's like, it just opened up something in me to kind of like accept it,
Yeah.
accept that actually did happen. And she's like, for me to know that happened, I'm able to kind of start moving past it. And I
Yeah.
thought that was just so profound
Yeah.
and amazing.
That particular client has been so unbelievably willing to show up and trust me that, like, okay, just take one more baby step. We're not going in the deep end. I'm not one of those people when I go to the pool, I jump into the deep end.
Hmm.
I start on the step and I slowly make sure that the water is comfortable for me. And that's what we do in this work. It's not about rip the band-aid off. It's not about how fast can we go. It's about take one baby step and let your nervous system see that it's still okay. And then we'll go a baby toe farther and let your nervous system adjust. And that's the name of the way that I've seen healing to actually not only work in the moment, but then last and not revert back to the old.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about the questions that you ask of our soul at the end. I was kind of excited. My questions were just rolled off my pen as soon as I sat down to write them. I just knew exactly what I wanted to ask, and it felt good to kind of send those to you in an email and feel like, okay, I'm going to get these answered. And I want to talk about the feeling that happened, or in the, as I'm hearing my own voice answering these questions. The next day, like I said, you reflect, you think about it, and the next day I was like, well, maybe was I just like, did I know the answers to those things? Like, did I just, was I just saying that because deep down I already knew that, and I just, didn't want to admit it to myself, or didn't want to say that I was scared, or didn't want to say that I was taking the easy road, or all of these things.
Wait, I have a question. Are you saying
Yeah.
that you were questioning what you heard your soul say?
No, I was questioning answers that I came up with, so like, for example, um, the distract, like how I'm so distracted. I was going through something where like I'm having all these distractions, and I just find myself so easily distracted all of a sudden. And I didn't used to be like that. And like, what is going on with me? And the answer was because it's easier. It's easier. Those distractions, those things that are taking you away from the work, it's because those distractions are easy. Going and doing a load of laundry is easy, and going to, make lunch is easy. And the work that you want to do that is in front of you, and the goals that you have in front of you, is hard, and you're kind of taking the easy way out. So it wasn't this like profound, like something's wrong in my brain. It was just like, hey, look at this and realize that this is hard. What your goals are is going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. And it's easier to pick up your phone and go on TikTok. So like, that's what you're doing. And so I was like, well, I don't know. Was that like my soul answering it? You have this like cynic that's saying like, wait, was that? But then I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, but if I knew that deep, deep down and I didn't hear myself say it, isn't that my soul? Like, isn't that my soul? I mean, people think of your soul as different things, and I may not have changed the cadence of my voice or spoke with an accent, but I was, those answers were coming from somewhere, and I didn't have those answers before we actually sat down. So whether it's, I knew it in my heart and I was just in a state where I could say it. Okay, but what is it? My heart? Is it my soul? Is it the universe? Is it God? Like, to me, all of that is kind of one. So I thought that was just interesting, and something that I kind of wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I've started to think about my soul slash universe slash God slash source slash whatever you want to call it, as I literally have been seeing it as like the Stay Puff guy from Ghostbusters. And that my physical being steps into that. Like my
Okay.
physical being is just like a little baby part of my pinky nail. And my soul is the essence of all that is around. And so, of course, like when people say to me, but didn't I already know that? Like, yes, of course, you are your soul. Your soul
Yeah.
is not some other thing that we need to connect you to. It's just that you're not listening.
Right. Right. And that's what it was for me. Like, this is telling me, made me listen,
Right.
made me listen.
Right. It gives you kind of that in a different tone or in a different way or in a different moment of getting the message out to you. And when people say to me, but was I just making it up? I'm like, no, how could you be making it up? You are the information, you are the informant.
Right.
Like,
But
yeah,
I get that, because in the state that you're in, you're like, that does come up, and you're like, wait, am I making this up? And I remember like kind of going through, when we were doing the past lives, and I was like, am I making this up? And then I was like, why, where would I get this? You know what I mean? Like, where would I get this particular?
and that's the juice is like, A, why would you be making it up? And even if you are making it up, is it applicable? Then who cares if you're making it up?
Right, right. Because it's coming from somewhere. Like, it's coming from somewhere.
It's all coming from inside the house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You were going to tell me about something crazy that happened.
So this is kind of, we've talked about kind of what happens during, and I want to talk about kind of what my experience was after. I've seen a change in the way I have been approaching my work. And I don't know, I think it's because when you ask a question like, why am I distracted, or why am I not putting my efforts, and you are told the answer, it's out there. So I kind of feel like once it's out there, I've kind of like held a mirror up to myself and said, it's you need to be. Consistency was something that came up quite a
Right.
lot in
Right.
my experience. And it maybe didn't make sense to me that day, but as I've been, kind of walking through life since then, it makes so much sense to me. But I've had some other things happen to me, and I'm just going to share an example. And I don't know if it's because of this experience, but I'm going to give you an example of what happened to me. So my daughter recently had a baby, which I'm not sure if I told you. And I, in Miami, and I was there with the baby, and I was, sitting in the room in the rocking chair, just like rocking the baby. And all of a sudden I felt my ex-husband's mother who had passed away, I don't know, 20 years, maybe 25 years. I felt literally like she was in the room with me. And it wasn't something where I was like, oh, wait, what's going on? What is that feeling? It was so immediate and
Yeah.
it was so clear. And thought to myself, oh, that's right. This is your great grandchild too. I literally was just like talking to her and
Yeah.
saying to her, like, oh, I forgot, like this
Yeah.
beautiful, wonderful child that I am like obsessed with and so in love with and like cannot even believe how much I love, that this is someone to you too. And
Yeah.
like, oh, look how
It's so
amazing and
beautiful.
wonderful she is. And like I said, it was just such a strange thing because it wasn't like I had to think about it. It was just like, her name is Lori. Oh, Lori's here, and I was like, oh, that's right, Lori, this is your great grandchild. Like,
Wow.
aren't you
Yeah.
excited?
It's such a cool visit.
It was so crazy. And nothing like that has really ever happened to me. I've had a couple of experiences like that. Another one was like a dream.
You probably opened because you're not closed off to it anymore. Like in our session, we probably opened that channel up for you a little more.
Okay.
And they're only going to come in as much as you can handle it. Right. So I have people ask a lot of times, like, is this going to bombard me? And I'm scared. No one and nothing is going to come through to scare you, to haunt you. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
You came through to show you that this little girl is protected and loved. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's more of, you've now acknowledged that there's more than meets the eye. And so now more than meets the eye is able to come through.
That actually
You're in
makes me
line.
feel great about it.
Yeah,
I
you're
was never scared. I was never felt unsafe or anything like that. And like I said, I didn't even really have the time to think about it. It was just
yeah.
something that, kind of came to me. And like I said, there was a couple other things and they're very, that was really the most like intense one. And I haven't even told anybody about this yet. So they're all, my family's going to hear about it through this podcast, apparently. Yeah, I mean, and I think I just didn't tell anybody about it because I don't know, it felt kind of normal to me. And I think when I talk about it, it doesn't maybe sound normal. And so I just
That's your
felt,
judgment of it though. Like, that's our work. You and I can do that work on cleaning up what that judgment is.
yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe when it first happened, I just didn't feel like it needed to be told to anybody. Like I just felt like that was just something between her and I that happened.
Sure.
And I was happy
Right.
for her.
But if you're not saying it because you don't want to deal with people's responses, that's a different issue.
Yeah. Well, there is that too. I
Yeah.
mean, there
And I
definitely
will
is
say
that.
that a lot of people have said, it's not like the next day all of the juice from this is going to be suddenly land. Like, this is going to keep unfolding, right? This isn't something that stops working. This is going to continue to create impact. And frankly, every time you listen to the recording, it creates more impact because you're hearing something different, remembering something different, getting a different detail out of it. So the work continues working long after the session.
Yeah. So when you have you done this same thing with the same client? Like, oh, can people do this more than once?
Yeah. At the end of the session, I usually ask, would you like to work in this way again? If so, give me a keyword. The client will come up with 2 words that they are in charge of, that when they tell me to say those words, I can say it and we'll go like right back in. So you don't have to do the whole 10-minute induction. And I've questioned, is this really going to work? And they go right back in. It's pretty wild.
Really? So you don't go through the whole beginning part
You
of
don't have to
it?
see a red bird again. No, there's like a little paragraph that I read of like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Do I have your permission? Are you ready? Do you remember what we're going to do? Are you wanting to do this? Like, I ask 25 times, like, you are
Yeah.
in control. Do you want to? And then immediately I'm like, okay, look down. What do you see? And they're in another lifetime.
Wow.
One woman that I did this with, this is wild. She said, I do nature care. And she started reading off all these recipes of like plant medicine. Like, if you take it wasn't this, but it was something like, if you take geranium with rose petals and mix it into a tea, that will bring love, or something like that. And
Oh my gosh.
she was like a witchcraft kind of thing with plants and herbs and stuff.
Wow.
Nature craft. I told her she should start a business of like making soaps called Nature Craft.
I love that.
Yeah, that one was really wild. And I had one of the people that you interviewed and talked to, she and her business partner, I worked on both of them, and they had the same keywords at the end. They didn't talk to each other about it. Like one of them went first and then the other one went weeks later. And that's not like a thing of all the things that you're seeing in it. That's not
Right.
something you're going to tell someone about. They had the same words.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
How did they react when you told them that they had the same do they know now that they had the same words?
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually on their podcast and I told them on the podcast because I had forgotten before. And we were talking about it and they were
Wow.
like, holy shit, that's crazy. It was wild.
Wow.
Really interesting.
It was really such a great experience. I'm so happy to have done it, and I'm so happy to talk to you about it, and I loved speaking with the people that went through this experience with you.
Nice.
It was great. It was such a great and I really one of the people that you connected me with I think who you're talking about who has a podcast, like we really connected on a bunch of different levels too.
Can I just tell a little bit of her story? She wouldn't mind. And it's actually on her podcast.
Absolutely.
So her name is Karen, and their podcast is called Seeking Center. And Karen had been working in corporate for a long time and was very successful at her job and was a big career person. And she was miserable, but like family dependent on the money. And my whole thing when I'm working with people is I'm never going to tell you to quit your job. I understand you have a mortgage and private schools and like things to pay for. So it's not about quit the job. It's about change the way you're responding to the stress of the job
Mhm.
so that you can then figure out how it all works. And in Karen's session, one of her, I think it was her soul said to her, you can continue on this path, no problem, but know very clearly this path, if you stay in this job for very much longer, it is actively taking years off of your life. So it's not going to be the kind of thing where like, you died 20 years before, but it's going to definitely, it's impacting your quality of life and the longevity of your life. But do as you need to do. And a week and a half later, she wasn't going to quit. She still couldn't quit. And a week and a half later, they gave her a severance package and
Yep.
they made the decision for her. And she was flying into Chicago and we were like having this meetup for a business thing. And she gets out of the car and she goes, I got the fucking package. And we were like, my God, oh my gosh. So this whole session just set into play the energy that she needed to be willing to energetically let it go.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then her soul set it all up so that, look, you don't even have to quit. We're going to pay you through the year and we're going to
Yep.
make it so that we'll do this hard part for you. And it all, I mean, her, like I talked to her the other day and she's like, I'm so happy. It's like, it's gross. Like,
It literally came through when she was talking to me on the phone that I stopped and I was like, I have to tell you how happy I am for you because I feel the joy speaking to you. I feel your joy coming through the phone. And she started laughing. And I said, really, she told me that story. And I think it's so inspiring. And she said, I didn't do anything different. I didn't go into work the next day and act differently or say anything or talk about anything. She said, my energy was ready to move on and my soul made it happen. And it was because of, me getting in touch with my soul and being able to speak to it. And I just think that's such an inspiring story. And now, she's, building this new brand that is so exciting. And just, I loved hearing the joy in her voice. And I love when people are able to follow their passion and find their purpose. And I really felt like she was doing that. And I was just like, oh, I'm so happy for you.
part of these sessions, because in every session, I ask at the end of the soul part, what is my purpose here? It immediately, it's like it ping pongs your trajectory. Once you hear your soul say what your purpose is, you can't unhear it. And it
Yeah,
automatically starts unfolding and moving you in that direction where you don't need to know the finish line. You just need to know the next baby step in a way that you can't ignore it. And this provides that opening.
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's,
Absolutely.
I don't even know how to say it any differently. That's just that's what's been so cool and so beautiful.
No, and it absolutely was. And that was a perfect way to say it. And I think a perfect way to wrap this up. I want people to be able to find you, and your website is Lizzi, Lizzi Cutler.com. You're also on TikTok, and you're on social media, you're on Instagram. I know that you have energy clearing and energy work that you do with people, both in groups and singular coaching. And now this great experience that you take people through, past life quantum healing. So thank you so much for your time and taking me through this and taking all of our listeners through this. It was a great experience for me, and I'm so happy for you that you're facilitating this, really great experience for people. And I know that they're all happy about
Yes.
it.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for being willing to jump in. And I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Girl Crush podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on this episode and my guest. If you're enjoying this podcast, please hit the subscribe button. You can also leave me a comment about the episode. I create this show for you, and I would love to hear your feedback. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more information on upcoming topics, guests, and some other fun content. Thanks again for being here.